Hello class. Today we're going to talk about two example cases of consumer profiling. It was your readings. One was about young green prosumers and another one was about the simple man. Okay, so this two article is separate two articles and they're talking about two different themes, but I believe that they're talking about pretty much about the same issue, which is a big phenomenon that this study is concerning about pretty much about nowadays. Lots of scholars and economists and the government and governance are discussing the basic income to make this word even more sustainable. That means we can live our life and caring for others, and we can live together in this very small globe, and we're gonna find a way to make this our lives even more sustainable and happier. Okay, so this two article is basically talking about questioning the materialism, questioning the capitalism and the consumerism at the same time, and they are talking about how to jump out of this system, this social hierarchical kind of system that has been established for a long time. And this is the system that we are living in, and it is causing lots of social problems, of the inequality issues, and they are pretty much talking about the sustainability, making the sustainable environment for the future generations. Okay, so the young green consumers, this article is talking about the younger generation, like in their teenager groups, and the young generation in their 20s. They are concerning pretty much about the environment, because this is the world that we are gonna live on for the rest of our times. Okay, and the simple man, that article is discussing about their ethics of caring. Okay, they are the generation, the older generation, who is responsible to hand down this world, which is having lots of social problems due to the long-term accumulated kind of issues, social issues that it has driven or came from the ideology of capitalism. Okay, so I'd like to talk more about how to break this kind of social structure which has established the capitalism, and they are protesting and they are liberating themselves to do something to change the world. All right, so the simple man and for example, I have brought these pictures like younger generation and who are actively participating and who are leading the movement of environmental like environmentalists who are caring about the environment, not just about the environment, physical environment as well as the social environment as well. And their father's generations. Here I have brought the picture of Leonardo DiCaprio, and he had mentioned and doing pretty much a job and good works for the environment and for the sustainability issues, and they are making their strong kind of statement. And I have brought the picture of Steve Jobs here. Okay, Steve Jobs has mentioned that I'm gonna read this sentence. It is a quote of Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs has said that simplicity, that's been one of my mantras. Mantra here means belief, strong belief, but that is from the religious kind of term, which is from Buddhism and Hinduism, and they're talking about their mind, their personality, their inner mind is pursuing those kind of beliefs of simplicity. Okay, simple is focus, and simplicity. Simple can be harder than complex. So we're calling the older generation, like they're simple, they don't have their taste, and they're just making money and spending for a living. But actually it is not. This is the generation who had like lived their life for a long time, and they have experienced a lot, and they have complex issues they have experienced before. Now they are putting focus, they're paying attention on how to keep their life as simple as possible. What is the most important? What is the most meaningful ways of life, keeping the simplicity, right? So here you have to work hard to get your thinking clean, to make it simple, but it is worth it. It is worth it in the end, because once you get there, you can move mountains. Okay, so that is very planned kind of simplicity. It is simplicity but complex simplicity. Okay, so this is the simplicity that they're talking about. So they are father's generation, they have ethics, and they have responsibility for the next generation. So this is how they are thinking about their ways of life, as labeled as simplicity. All right, so today we're going to talk about their beliefs and how those kind of generation gaps, because they are talking pretty much the same, but they cannot understand better about each other's generation. So we are gonna read these two articles together, discuss about the issues that these two articles is talking about at the same time. All right. Okay, I have recently read this article from The Guardian that saying that the coronavirus is a warning sign of global warming and the climate crisis. Okay, so why? So I was so shocked. I've never thought about that, because the coronavirus and the new kind of virus that has been spread, and that has been come from the wildlife and the wildlife animals, and that is due to the climate change. The wildlife animals are losing their place to survive, to live. So that's why that has made the contact with the wildlife animals and the people. And the climate, the global warming is going on due to many ecological footprints that we made for a long time, and we are responsible, especially the fashion industry is responsible pretty much on this environmental pollution, because due to the global trade, we are doing the global trade, and we are because seeking the profits, because fashion industry and many other, most of the industries are profit seeking and profit driven kind of industry, and they are searching for the cheap labors all the time on the opposite side of the globe. So they are searching for cheaper labors, and that's why they're traveling a lot. That means they are shipping the materials and the clothings all the time, and they are traveling for the major fashion shows, and they're traveling a lot to buy clothes, to buy and meet the people of the industry. So they are making unnecessary kind of traveling too much due to the global trade. And one major reason why fashion industry is responsible for the environmental pollution is they are producing clothes, and they are producing too much clothes, excessive amount of clothes that cannot consumed by the people. So they are making much more than the real uses of the clothing. So in that way, they're not selling. They cannot sell all the products they have produced, and they cannot sell the excessive like major percentage of their clothing that they produced is just cannot be sold, used by the end user, like end use consumers, and they are gonna be landfilled. And you know what? Most of the clothes are nowadays made by the fast fashion industry. They are producing clothing with synthetic fibers, and the synthetic fibers cannot be just buried in the under the land. The landfill, that means it is causing the soil degradation and water pollution as well. And they are using toxic kind of chemicals to produce the materials that it has been used for the clothing. And at the same time, they're polluting the water due to the process of dyeing and finishing kind of process. It is really like kind of dangerous kind of process is involved in mass producing clothing. So this way, if they continue to produce clothes in excessively like this way, this kind of social problems or the climate change problem, which is causing like this kind of serious coronavirus expansion, will be continued over and over again next year, over again. That might be very, very serious kind of problems. Okay, so that is why a lot of the fashion collections they are saying that they try to make just exact amount of money that they could sell, and they are paying attention to reuse their archives and reuse the retro designs and the retro materials that has been used already for making their past clothes that they cannot use. So they are recycling the material, and they are sending their messages to us by their collections, like you can see and hear, like Virgil Abloh's. And Virgil Abloh's green campaign was huge last year, and this year Balenciaga has had their performance of walking on the underground, very dark and gloomy kind of environment, which is symbolizing this environmental change. Okay, so they are doing and concerning much about the environment, but it is really hard to change the fashion system right away, okay? Because so many people are involved, and they have their the factories and the companies they're making contract with. So they're saying it takes time, but a lot of protesters and environmentalists saying right away, this is really serious kind of problem right away. So during the Fashion Week period, like during the New York Fashion Week period, there was another protests were going on, saying that they are having their signs and saying that say no to clothes with a toxic trail. So they're making a lot of ecological footprints traveling around doing global trade, and they are pointing out that is the problem. Okay, let me introduce Greta Thunberg, who is very famous environmentalist, very influential among teenagers, and she is only 16-year old, but she is not going to school. Okay, she refused to go to school because she is thinking it is useless. Okay, so and you don't have to take a bus. That means you're taking a bus, you are leaving your ecological footprint, you are causing air pollution, and it is unnecessary way to use the limited energy of this earth. Okay, so she is saying that you can take a very professional and expert and scholarly kind of information at home. You can take the online class from Harvard University at home. Okay? You can study alone at home. This is what she is thinking about, and she has pioneering on the movement of this ritual, like a weekly ritual of teenagers, which is called hashtag Friday for Future. So students refuse to go to school on every Friday, and they are studying alone at home. Okay, so you can see lots of students are gathered on Friday in major cities like London, New York, and all over the places in the world, and they are participating on this ritual event that they are saving their energy and they can have a chance to study alone. Because that is technically possible, studying alone. So she has participated, and she is sending very strong kind of statement and messages to the teenagers to know better about the environmental issues. This is very serious kind of issues, the environmental change and this situation going on in the major big companies and the industries are pretty serious. This is what she's talking about. So last year she has participated in the UN Climate Action Summit last year, and that means she's living in Sweden right now, and she has to travel to the United States. That means she has to take a flight. That means she's gonna leave her unnecessary ecological footprint. So she chose to take a boat instead. So she crossed the Atlantic Sea by sailing. She sailed across the sea and then emission-free little boat. So she traveled to America with a boat for a month. Okay, and she is having her YouTube channel and her blog and sending message with her. She is very knowledge about the environmental situation, and she is sending message to the industry to tell that, and to adults to say that tell us the truth, because for example, the fashion industry is not revealing their records and their sales and how much unnecessary products were made and buried in the landfill, and they're not revealing their information how clearly they're not sending out all the information to the public. So that is why she is criticizing about, and she is making statement about, right? So this article, the Green Prosumer article, has talked about the consumer behavior as well as their motivation. Motivation is a strong driver of your behavior. That means where your motivation has come from is very important kind of factor that you have to consider to understand better about somebody's behavior. Okay, so here, the motivation that the author has talked about is the issues which is going on the opposite side of this globe, in Bangladesh. There was the factory collapse because the working condition and the factory facility itself was really poor. That means we're calling this factory garment making factory, sweatshop. Okay, so why we're calling that sweatshop is the factory workers are too many workers are placed and concentrated in a small place, small factory, and they're working really hard, and it is not air conditioned, and the air is not circulated, and lots of people are gathered here so they are sweating all the time. So we're calling this kind of poor working condition and the factory of those poor working condition, we're calling those factories sweatshop. There are lots of sweatshop in Bangladesh and in many other places where the labor is cheaper than the other countries. So we're calling those kind of situation. So due to the problems of the global warming, we're establishing those kind of working places for the people to work there, and that is kind of exploitation. So their former experiences of these consumers of this study has known pretty much about this kind of situation, social situation. So that was one motivation which has caused their behavior, why they're participating in this environmentalist kind of activism. All right. So this is the interview question asking, why have you become interested in environmental well-being? Okay. The first question. And the second one, why have you become a member of environmental group? So they are targeting the group members of the environmentalist and environmental group, and they are asking those people why you're participating here, in what circumstances that you decided to participate in this kind of activities, and tell me more about your typical day. What you do on a typical day, and ask about the dumpster diving. That means they are diving the dumpsters to searching for some old clothes, or the food they can eat. They're pretty much talking about the food here, because the consumers, we are fashion consumers, we are also food consumers, all right? So it is the same kind of mechanism why they are interested in reusing the unused the clothes or the food that is produced, massively produced, but is not used properly. So that was the major questions, and they have divided the subgroups of the environmentalists, the green prosumers. So they have divided the steps of their engagement, and they labeled as contraction, control, creation, step by step their engagement on this environmental action, and they labeled as semi-group, prosumer, and developed their ideas, and they continue to participate, and they could become the empowered green prosumer, and then the next step they're gonna go on to be a creator, that means liberated green consumers. So let's look at these three subgroups one by one, right? So the author of this article is saying that there are 3 steps to become a green prosumer. Okay, so to become a liberated prosumer. Okay, so the first stage was called contraction stage. You are gonna see what's going on, you're gonna recognize the problem. Okay, so for example, the one interviewee is saying that I get really angry sometimes when I see how much good clothes being thrown out. Okay, and it's ridiculous when they cannot let me to just have those, okay, for free. It's probably ended up in landfill. Okay, so what the industry is doing, like the wide industry is doing like that, is because if they just give away their unsold clothes to the public, or to the people who need it, that means they're gonna destroy the value of the brand or the value of the company. So that's why they're just hiding those amount of their landfill. So that was the problem recognition stage, step 1. And step 2 is called control. Control means they can have a power, to make control of to say something, and to being powerful to make a statement to the industry and to the society as a whole. Okay, so they are making a collective, they are making a group of the environmentalists to work together, to be together, to work together, to have a stronger and a louder kind of voice, to have a megaphone, to talk to this society that is the problem. Okay, so here is an example of one interviewee saying that empowered, who is called empowered green prosumer, and he's saying that my own stuff would be significant only if enough people could do it. Okay, so lots of people participate and lots of people move together on certain direction, then the change is possibly, like the change could be activated eventually. So that is why what this second group is talking about. So the power of the group as a group. Okay, so that was just called at the stage 2, and the stage 3 is called as liberated kind of green prosumer. These people are those who are not 100% agree with the groups of the environmentalists. Sometimes if the group of the people, when the group is going to expand, like as time goes by, the group will expand. That means lots of people will gather and they're gonna set their rules and codes and norms. In that way, you cannot 100% agree with them. For example, just as the fashion communities that we had talked about on the earlier article, they are getting bigger. That means lots of people who are thinking in a different way will gather, and they cannot agree on certain ideas, and that means you're gonna leave the community. Okay, so on that part, you're too radical. On that part, I'm not that 100% agree with you. In that case, they are finding their own way because they are empowered, their knowledge, they know pretty much about what's going on, and then you're gonna be separated as an individual, one individual, and find your way to what I can possibly do to make change. Okay, so that is called the liberated green prosumer. All right. So what they're doing is they're questioning the existing economic system, the system of economy. Like mainstream economists are saying that consumption is good for the economy. Yeah, like mainstream scholars like Adam Smith, the father of economy, the field of economy, and he is saying that he has that the consumption is good for the economy. So the production and the consumption cycle, produce and consume, and produce again and consume again, and that will develop the wealth of the nation. At the same time, it'll develop the society, and then it'll increase the wealth of the whole globe. That was what economists or mainstream economists are strongly believe about. Actually, we are questioning what. Okay, so having the environmentalist is saying that, protesting that having something is not something to express me. Like lots of people are saying that it is having something is human beings' basic needs. Okay, so we don't know. Is that basic needs? Our basic needs? Is it my basic needs? Having something, expressing something is my basic needs. So we're gonna re-question about the unquestioned kind of question. So questionable kind of question, like having something is my basic needs. Okay, is it good for the economy? Yeah. And is it good for the globe eventually? Okay, and they are thinking of the alternative way, the alternative economic system, which is called sharing economy. We can wear beautiful clothes, we can wear like we can pursue the aesthetics wearing a certain clothes, but we don't have to purchase a new clothing. So they're talking about the clothing swap, and they're also talking about the recycling and upcycling, and those kind of consumer activities are saying about the future of the fashion. So that is what this article is talking about, the process of contraction and control having power, and you're gonna go on to move on to create something, like create a new kind of environmental system, economic system as well, right? So the third group that this article is talking about is liberated green consumer groups, and these people are working as an environmentalist at an individual level and on personal levels. They're doing some kind of they're making changes at a personal level. That means they're doing something for the environment, okay? And there are many faces of environmentalists, and they refuse to belong to certain environmentalist group because what they're doing is not 100% agreeable. In that case, they're spreading out all the leaflets, and this is cutting the trees of the Amazon, and that is not for the environmental as well. And they are having megaphone, and they're speaking out, and some kind of their protest is too radical. So that is why some individual, because everybody has different faces, everybody has different ideas, so they want to do something that they are strongly believe it. So they strongly believe. So we are living in a socially connected kind of society. That means you can talk on the social media, and you can upload a YouTube video to talk about something, and that is gonna make the change if you are certain about your ideas to do the right thing for the environment. Okay. So there is a very skillful environmental activist who is working on a personal level, okay? She is Suzanne Lee. She has given a TED Talk a couple of years ago, and she said that it is possible to grow your own clothes. Okay, all right. So she said that you can click on the link below and you can see her TED Talk video. Okay, right. And she said that it is the process. Okay, so we start by brewing the tea, like 30 liters of the tea, lots of amounts of the tea, and you're gonna put kilos of sugar, and you're gonna add some living organism like yeast, and you can add some yeast to let the material fermented. Okay, so fermented. So you're gonna let this bottle bath. Okay, so the bottle, you can see how the material will grow like that, and you can add some acetic acid, and you're gonna recycle your old the brewed tea again to make this material, and you can get finally you can get this like soft and stretchy kind of material that you can practically use to make your clothes. The jacket she's wearing right here is made that is the material that he like grew, okay, and got to make a piece of clothing. Okay, so the clothing and the design of the clothing is pretty attractive to me. All right, so that was kind of idea of presumption, and she had a power because internet savvy kind of youngsters can have a power to share their ideas and share their kind of recipes to make the clothing, and they are changing the mood and changing the marketplace, and lots of consumers to participate in this kind of movement, right? So this article has finally redefined presumption. Okay, so as far as I know, the prosumer was a compound word of consumer and producer. Okay, so consumer who is involved in the process of production of the industry, and they're gonna work collaborate with the producers to make consumption eventually. So they are taking the role of producer and consumer. That was the definition of prosumer. But this article is redefining a presumption as producing something for personal use as well as for the exchange, and to co-construct the phenomenon which is involved in production and consumption. That means they're gonna make a new economic system, and they're questioning the materialism itself, they're questioning existing economic system itself, and they're questioning the capitalism itself to make the product for the personal use and for the others to make some exchange, like direct exchange. So that was considered as the another or expanded kind of definition of presumption. And nowadays, with the advance of the technology, a lot of prosumers who are making for themselves, they're increasing and they're spreading out their skills and knowledge to produce something. Okay, so there are 3D printers. Okay, 3D printer, you can see picture here, you can see the picture of 3D printer, and it is really sustainable kind of production way. You can recycle the materials that has been used before, yeah, and you can find the ways to make your own piece of clothing with the material. There are lots of possible kind of material resources that you can use for the clothing. Okay, so it's very sustainable kind of approach. And this department is planning to purchase a 3D printer, and I have done a lot of research about the 3D printer that we're gonna adopt, like Stratasys, and the department is making the final decision. So maybe next year you can see the 3D printer in this department as well. And that is what the new economy and the new consumer culture of presumption will continue to grow. Okay, let's move on to talk about the simple man now. All right, beginning question. Let's see here. In contemporary society, males are facing tensions in the marketplace between conforming to social expectations about what it means to be a man and their desire to break away from the constraints of hegemonic masculinity through consumption. So they want to break away from the hegemony of masculinity. This is the starting question. If you say yes, okay, I would say, well, okay, because this sentence is asking the males who are living in nowadays society, they're concerning about their identity as a man. I would say not for everybody. Okay, this is very industry oriented kind of point of view. So the industry want a different subgroups of the consumers who are questioning the identity of masculinity. So in that way, they can develop and create another niche kind of blue ocean kind of market for them to participate to make their consumption. All right. Okay, so I would say somewhat yes, somewhat no. All right, so this article is talking about no. All right, the simple man is the man who is questioning not for their identity. They are done with concerning and being confused about their identity, and they are thinking about the society, yeah, and the future generation, and what can they possibly do to change this economic system. So that is what this article is mainly talking about. All right, so we're gonna here we can read this sentence here. One interviewee, one case of the simple man is saying that before money was the thing, like when they were young, okay? But now I really try to focus on the positive parts of the things and the being thankful for the things that I love, not for the things that I don't have. So those kind of ideas are the this specific group, this like exceptional groups called simple men are concerning about, right? So let's talk about the simple men. Okay, so this article is talking about who is the simple man. Okay, so this is the research that has been done in the United States. So all the cases, all the interviewees of this study is American, middle-aged American. All right, so the typical American simple man that like in general people are thinking like manhood and being a man in American society means that men who need to rebel and to strive to gain attention for his political views or statement, so they're strong with their opinions and being powerful to say something and to be influential to others. That was considered as manhood, what the typical man, American man, want to be, and that is called the typical American man. But this article labeled this exceptional kind of people who is simple and who is not very having any complaints about their lives, and they're having contentment. That means they're pretty much satisfied with what they have, and they don't have any basic needs unfulfilled, like they don't have extra needs for safety or belongings or sense of belongings or security for reasons. And in that case, these people were called as the simple men, and the economic men as well, who are considered during the benefits or the price to quality ratio when they're purchasing something, and they're making the choice for their clothes as well, and being simple and considering quality and price as a major priority when they're considering purchasing something. And they are thinker, they are saying they're rational kind of decision maker. So they are educated and idealistic kind of consumers who are really thinking about all the practical attributes of the functions of the clothing and the practical uses of the clothing. So these are the typical like kind of characteristics of these groups of consumers. Not very interesting, right? But they have additional characteristic that we haven't thought pretty much about, that is called internal conflict. They are experiencing internal conflict because the times that they have lived during their younger ages has been changing a lot for the last few decades. The society and the spirit of the times, which is also called as the zeitgeist, has been changed dramatically. For example, they were when they were young, they were living in very individualistic society. Majorly in the United States, it is very individualistic culture. It was until now, I'm not sure, but it was a very individualistic culture. That means being yourself and expressing yourself, who you are, was considered most importantly. Okay, so they were expressing that they are special, they are unique. But think of that, everybody is unique, that nobody is unique, nobody is special. So nowadays, the globally, the whole environment, the social environment, the mood or people's beliefs are changing from individualistic kind of personality to collectivistic kind of culture, to caring for others and thinking more about others than me, and sacrificing some some part of my wish or desire for others. So if they are in the middle age, that means they have their family and they have their people to take care of. In that case, they're gonna feel a sense of conflict or sometimes sense of guilt as well. They're gonna feel the sense of guilt that they felt for their previous lavish spending and shopping and they used to do, but now they are changing their minds and the times has been changed, so they are experiencing so much internal conflict. So this article is saying deeply about this issue, right? So the fashion industry is responding to these specific groups of the people who are emotionally intelligent and who are having like feminine, so-called like conventional feminine kind of characteristics, caring for others and who are more emotionally intelligent and having those kind of the emotional sensitivity caring for others. So in that case they would like those style like feminine style, which is once called as feminine style. It looks like the female's clothing. So gender fluidity in the fashion industry is quite a long-term kind of trend. It has been lasted for the last 5 years, more than 5 years, and it's all over the world, like global kind of trend. And it's definitely because we talk pretty much about gender in so many different ways. So today I'd like to talk briefly about the gender theory, all right, and how the gender theory and the sex theory has been developed and trend and changed and remoderated. Okay, let me introduce a little bit about this famous theory, which is called gender schema theory, which is very influential until now. And Sandra Bam has talked pretty much about we are calling men are born having masculine characteristics, and women were born with having women's like feminine characteristics. So that was what the general people who are living in like 30 years ago, 40 years ago were generally, conventionally, traditionally thinking about. So Sandra Bam questioned those ideas. No. Women can have male's characteristic and male could have female's characteristics. Okay, so that was the 4 dimension that Sandra Bam has divided, like 4 dimensions. You can see the 4 dimension of masculine and feminine and androgynous. That means having the feminine characteristic and the masculine characteristic at the same time, and undifferentiated dimension, that is you are low on the level of masculine characteristic as well as you're very low on the feminine characteristics. So like 50-60 years ago, men who are having masculine characteristics, like her scale is very interesting. I like soccer. So you are gonna check, and then I'm very high, very agree, very disagree, and that's kind of a scale. Or I like playing with a doll, that was considered as feminine characteristics. So she has just reflected the conventional idea and labeled as female characteristic and male characteristic, and that was lots of scholars are criticizing about how can you label like playing soccer. If you like playing soccer, you are having like male characteristic. But when she was studying in the 80s, that was the conventional notion of the people who are thinking like playing with the doll is female kind of characteristics. But what is special, what is important about her point of view is she had divided this four dimension and tried to understand this kind of feminine or labeled as so-called feminine or masculine characteristics could be the individuals, like very individuals characteristic. It is not about the gender characteristic, not you are born in that way. That means the individual use gender as a way to organize various things in a person's life into categories and question the social beliefs and assumption that sex roles are opposite, binary, bipolar, and mutually exclusive. So if you are feminine, you are not masculine. If you are masculine, you are not feminine. That does not make any sense. So that was what Bam has pointed out and found out, that you can have both feminine kind of characteristic at the same time. You can have the masculine so-called kind of characteristics. So that was her major finding, right? Now we have Dr. Judith Butler, who is very famous professor of psychology and who published the article Curing BAM, Sandra BAM. So curing here means questioning. So saying no, questioning Sandra BAM's sex, like gender schema theory, sex schema theory. Based on her questions like, how can we describe or define this such things like male traits or the female traits? Okay, so that was okay like 40 years ago, 50 years ago for the general understanding, but nowadays that theory is not like that persuasive to perceive and understand. Okay, so Judith Butler had mentioned that are we assigned of our sex of birth? No. Okay, is sex different from gender? No. Okay, so people are generally thinking that gender is your social characteristic that you are perceived as you are educated and learned and you are having such kind of perception that your gender is a social thing and your sex is your biological characteristic of yourself. So the sex and gender is so too different and too separated kind of concept to discuss. But Sandra Bam said, no, we cannot divide or distinguish people like based on their sex. Okay, so so you might say, well, what? Okay, so what Sandra Bam is talking about is sex is just important, just biological kind of differences, which is important for the hospital people. Okay, so blood, just as the blood type is very important for the hospital people, but that is not that important for us. For Western like people, they don't know which blood type they are born with. Okay, so this is what Sandra Bam is talking about. She is very active feminist nowadays, talking pretty much about the sex distinction, and that is kind of social distinction that is not acceptable for us because biologically we look like, as a fashion people, the physical difference is very important, but Sandra Bam said we have different figures, different image of the body of the men and the women's body, female body and men's body, based on our a small kind of differences that we can witness on our throats or our boobs or our organs, and she's saying that it is just a small kind of difference, that there are somebody who are having bigger hands and some are smaller hands, and the color of our eyes are all different. So that is individual difference. Okay, so the height or the weight or the figure of our body is just individual difference, and that is not that important to understand about someone. Okay, so this is not identifying like sex, male, female. That is not considered to be important. That is what Judith Butler said about to make sex gender as minimal presence in human social and psychological life. That is important statement that Judith Butler has made. All right. So agender movement is still going on in the fashion field, okay? So agender here means anti-gender. They're going against the idea of gender division and sex division. So fashion industry in major collections, they are having casting the female models on the menswear collection and male models on the female collection, and they're presenting the menswear the female model wearing menswear and male model wearing women's wear, and that is very kind of seen nowadays fashion industry and fashion collections has been done and presented in those ways. You're gonna have your choice to choose which clothes that you're going to wear, because the gender differences is not gender difference. It is individual kind of characteristic that you'd like to be comfortable with wearing on those kind of clothing. That is on the line of the personal style that you're pursuing or seeking for, what is aesthetically more attractive to you, which style you like more. So you can have variety of choices from menswear and women's wear, and the retail places and the retail environment is catching up. They are having spaces for the women and men can shop in a same place, so they can have variety of collections of the clothing and the design to choose, right? So there in the fashion field, there are no division until now. Like for the past 5 years, it was kind of trend and the movement in the fashion field. But okay, in case of the Selfridge department and a luxury department, and they had this agender movement, and it was going on for a long time, more than 5 years until now, and they're still doing their campaign to expand those ideas to the general public and to make them to be involved and try something new like in the marketplace. And they are discussing pretty much about the gender difference is not about the sex differences. It's about the individual characteristic that you are born with. Okay, so that was the thing. But there's some points, like some people who are saying or criticizing that it's just a marketplace environment, it is just a trend and it'll not go on for a long time, it is not sustainable, and it'll not last for a long time. And you can still, if you can visit on the website of Selfridge, you can clearly see the division of men and women, and they're saying that's what consumer wants. Okay, so if you are leading the industry, and if you're leading the trend, in that case it is there like if Selfridge is doing this, Selfridge is responsible to make the online shopping environment as consistent as their philosophy and their beliefs. So that was what people are concerning about these issues going on in a contemporary society. So today we have talked about the environmental issues as well as the gender issues, and how the generation conflict and the people's major concern talking about the diversity and fluidity and caring caring for the environment at the same time, questioning the capitalism and the materialism, and how to make your consumption choices even more sustainable or happier. Okay, so next week we are going to talk further about consumption values and what today's consumers are caring more about. And then we're going to discuss what you're going to do for your second assignment. Don't forget, your first assignment is due this next Tuesday. Okay, and okay, that is it. All right, thank you. And we're going to see you next week.